All right, welcome to the next component here of this smart reading system, so that you can not just be the most well-read person in the room, not just the smartest, but instincts honed so that you get actual big benefits, not just bragging rights. Life's not about bragging. It's not about the people who talk, it's about the people who do. So how can this help you do stuff? So remember, the books are not mutually exclusive with doing. Only for people that misunderstand books' purpose. So the next component is you need a routine. Okay, I'm going to get to here coming up in videos on specifics on how to read, but I'm setting up the philosophy. Philosophy always comes before technique. Or else I told that story of the plane that crashed in the rainforest in South America. People got out. I don't know if it's a true story or not, but they get out. 90% of people in the plane get machetes and they start chopping their way through the jungle to the rainforest to get to a village to find help. So these people, there's some engineers, they better sharpen the machete, and they sharpen and they go through and they're cutting their way through. And all of a sudden, one guy's smart enough to climb up a tree and look at the big picture philosophy and direction of the business, and guess what? He says, hey guys, all you guys cutting cutting a path, you're cutting it the wrong way. The village isn't this way, it's that way. Now all the ones on the ground got mad because they're like, oh, they were just good at technique. Ooh, we're cutting at 45-degree angles perfectly. I know how to sharpen this. But philosophy must come first. You must chop in the right direction. So the next philosophy, the next component here is the routine. Now, the routine and the type of books that you should read. We talked about your 150. We talked about gold mining, reading with intention, the Dalai Lama's principle of, making it instinctual, making deep friendships, quote unquote, alliances with key books in the 4 areas: health, wealth, love, and happiness, 30 or 40 in each category, mostly nonfiction, but some key fiction in there is no problem. I like Steinbeck. I was reading Homer, obviously. I like All Quiet on the Western Front, Remark. These are fiction books. Nothing wrong with fiction, but it's a tool. Don't overuse the tool. Coffee may be good at 1 glass, but 10 glasses of it's going to cause you problems. So same with books. Generally, I like nonfiction. So once you have all that, now we need the routine and a little more specifics on the type of books. So most people just categorize books in 2 ways. So the next component is the types of books. And I mean a little different than what we talked about before. Most people think of books as just fiction or nonfiction, or just categories like health book, wealth book. What I want to now talk about is subtypes. I believe there's about 3 types of books that you need to read continually. There's the classics. Okay, there's classics. Classics are books that have stood the test of time, that are at least 50 years old and highly respected. I love if they're more than 100 years old. Why? Well, it's not a guarantee that they're trustworthy, because remember, it's like anything in life. Who do you listen to? People get confused with reading because they listen to the wrong people. Who do you listen to? That's a big part of your life. So when it comes to books, you want to listen at least to some classics, because even though the masses are not always right, there's a good book, The Fall of Crowds, but there's another good book which shows the science. There is a wisdom in crowds. A book that's lasted hundreds or thousands of years probably has value for you, or else it would be forgotten, right? Any classic book, let's just name some. The Bible, the Quran, the works of Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates, the writings of Descartes, the writings of some of the great religious founders, Thomas Aquinas in, I think, the 1300s, the works of newer people like Darwin and Freud, Karl Marx. Even though you may disagree, always read disagreeing opinions. They're sharp people, right? Going back 40, 50 years, Peter Drucker business books. These are books winning friends and influencing people. So books that have stood the test of time, both in the amount of years they've been out and the amount of people that have read them. I call these classics. Now there's some on the, there's some instant modern classics, maybe The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or one of Tony Robbins' books. Maybe you put those in classics, but I tend to say books that are more than 50 years old. So when you're getting your books in health, wealth, love, and happiness, you want some in health that are classic health books. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's got a classic, it's not 50 years old, but it's a pretty classic book on health. Wealth, a classic book, like I said, books by Benjamin Graham in the early 1920s, 30s, 40s on the understanding the stock market. That's a classic. Books on love or social, maybe a book by Freud has some fascinating things on how humans interact, and books on happiness, the great philosophers. Okay, so Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, the Seneca, Nietzsche, although he may not be on happiness, right? But there's a lot of insight there. So in love and happiness, each of these, you need some classic books. Okay, secondly, B, you need some pure how-to books. Those are books that just lay it out, okay? They can be modern or they can be classic. Those are books like, what's a good how-to one that I have here? Well, I consider this one a how-to, working together. It's, how to have partnerships in business. How and why you need partnerships. That's a how-to book. The Practice of Management by Peter Drucker. Pretty how to manage a company. If you have a company or if you're an employee, a supervisor. So in health, you need some how-to ones. How to lift weights. Oh, in health, a classic one that's good is the story of Dr. Weston Price or the Hunzas. There's lots of cool classic. But for how-to in health, maybe you read Fit for Life or something like that. That's a very how-to one. A really good how-to health book is The Story of the Human Body by Lieberman. Great book. What else is a great health? This Diet Cults one I read recently is fascinating about why we get addicted and misled by diets. That's a how-to one. You walk away with it with a real skill. So the goal of how-to books are you literally can walk away. Classic books give you big picture philosophy. These how-to books, you walk away with something tangible. Okay, I learned, A how-to book can be a for dummies book on languages, or maybe you want to learn chess, or maybe you want to learn computer programming. Those would all be how-to. Lastly, the C, biographies. Biographies. Humans learn by osmosis. They don't learn audio, visual, or kinesthetic. That's wrong, in my opinion. It's by osmosis. So there is truth that obviously audio, visual, and kinesthetic by doing is important, but that's summed up in the word osmosis. By being around other humans that are ahead of you, the principle of law of 33% that I talked about in my TED Talk, the principle of mentorship comes from day-to-day interaction. Now, there's many great people that you and I cannot be around because they are no longer with us. They're dead for years, decades, or centuries. And so those people we can only get to, they were not around for videos or YouTube. They're only there through books. That's your best bet. So biographies of living, recently dead, and ancient people is a great way to build one of the most important things you'll need in life, which is courage. Courage to rise above the risks to get the reward. The two strongest cognitive biases in your brain that will mislead you, cause you to make mistakes, or cause you to do great things are the control that you have over reward bias and reward and pain, those two. And you overcome reward and pain. Now, I put risk in that category. Maybe you're afraid of doing something new. That's all under the pain. Freud talked about this in a classic book, Civilization and Its Discontents, where he said, someone asked him the purpose of life. He said, that's too hard of a question, but I can tell you what the behavior of humans reveal as to their primary intentions and motivations. And he said, people move towards intense pleasure and move away from pain and discomfort. So the way to get those two, you will need courage to overcome fear of pain and to be able to focus on the goal. You want to start a business, you want to lose 20 pounds, you want to find love. It's going to take courage. And biographies, in my opinion and my experience and the experience of many people, are one of the foundational ways that you do that. You know, Conrad Hilton, I have his book here somewhere. He's the great-grandfather of Paris Hilton. He built the Hilton hotel chain. He says there was a day where everything changed for him. He was 15 years old and he bumped into a book about Helen Keller, a biography about her, how she overcame through optimism the hurdles that she had with all her disabilities, not being able to see, hear, talk, interact with people. And that, he said, was the day where I learned about optimism. And that is what, he said, turned him into one of the great real estate billionaires and influential people of all time. And so that's the pattern over and over and over again as you read people, where they bumped into a person, but if the person was dead, they bumped into a book. And that book propelled them forward and gave them the courage to know someone's done it before. And the flip side, you know, I post, I don't know if you're on my Twitter, I post some daily summaries, and one of the ones that I posted was, you know, it's not as scary to do something, to fail, when you know other people have failed. Now, not that your goal is to fail, but you will have more courage to go, well, that person went through that and they seemed to survive. That person started a business and went bankrupt. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, made more money than anybody basically ever in modern business. His first business, after 2 or 3 years, he lost his business because he didn't read the lease correctly, and the business was taken over by the landlord. And he seemed to have done okay. That comes through reading the autobiography of Sam Walton. So if you're petrified of having failure, you go, well, I don't need to worry so much, because even if my business shuts down, there can be a great end result for me in the long run. So biographies. Now, we're gonna end. I'm gonna talk about this because this is kind of a long one. I've got a next video coming up, is how to implement that routine. You need a set routine about those 3 books. So we're going to unlock the next video, very important one. I want you to answer a few questions, okay? What is the greatest classic book that you've ever read or heard about that you want to have in your library? For me, the greatest classic is the Will Durant series, The Story of Civilization. What's yours? It's a book, stood the test of time, should be at least ideally 50 years older or older more, and many people have read it and liked it, obviously. The second thing is, what is an example of a book that is a how-to book? The best how-to book. I'll tell you mine, it's Peter Bevelin's book, A Few Lessons for Managers and Investors or something. A Few Lessons for Managers and Investors, I think. It's a how-to short book. It's the best book I've ever read on understanding money. That's the best how-to book for me. What is yours? Put that below this video in order to unlock the next video. Third, and lastly, what is the best biography that has instilled courage in you to overcome the risks and the potential pain to get the rewards that you've wanted in health, wealth, love, and happiness in your life? What is the big one? For me, in terms of biographies, there's many, and it changes over time. Recently, one of the great biographies I've read is Kon-Tiki, and that's, you'll see on my list. It's the story of Thor Heyerdahl, the Norwegian explorer who had the courage to float on a raft across the Pacific Ocean. I've been on the Pacific Ocean in a big boat. It's a very scary ocean, and he went across in a raft. And I realized if that man could do that and his team, then probably everything I do that quote unquote takes courage pales in comparison. There's many biographies. So answer that. Then I've got a very important thing on how to begin now as we get through the philosophy to actually implement the smart reading technique that's going to revolutionize your life. Trust me, books have tremendous power, not because they're books, but because the more you learn, the more you earn, not just financially, but in every other area of your life. So answer these 3 things, and I'll see you in a second on the next video.